Welcome to the Ferndale Library Podcast, A Little Too Quiet, where we bring you conversations about library life, as well as invite interesting guests from the community and the local arts scene here in Ferndale, Michigan, into this library so that we can not only make sure they're fully aware of the ongoing evolution and ever-sustained awesomeness of libraries, but we can also hear their stories and maybe even talk about some books with them. Our guest today is Nadir Omowale, a musician, songwriter, producer, marketing consultant, and I think a bit of a guru, really, not to mention a 15-time Detroit Music Award winner. Nadir, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Yes, and also we should start off by saying you're technically responsible for upping our game here in the library with our sound system. Nadir Omowale performed our summer concert series, and if I didn't introduce myself in this podcast, I'm Jeff Milo. If you've been listening, you already know that. But our producer, Kelly Bennett's here too.
Hello.
And Kelly Bennett spearheaded the music programming here at this library, and we invited you over, and you took a look at our PA. How did that go, Kelly?
Well, way back when we started our music programming, we didn't have much of a budget. We spent $200 on a small PA, and it got us going. We had a lot of smaller shows. But over the years, we've gotten more money and more interest from larger bands. So when we talked to Nadir about playing, he was like, yeah, what you have ain't gonna work for me.
Well, it's like, I want to bring my 6-piece band. So.
Yeah.
Right. It was great.
Yeah.
It was cool because, we might do that stuff here, but obviously you're an expert. And so for you to go, well, this is what I would need, and that's a good recommendation. We're like, handed it to our boss, and she said, okay, do what you got to do.
Yeah, well,
that was cool.
For sure, because I think often Kelly and I will get questions from local musicians who say, okay, if I come play the library, do I have to do an acoustic set?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's what you'd expect at the library, right?
You
need to be as quiet as possible.
Exactly, which it's part of the cheesy joke behind the title of this. Is people, a little too quiet. We thought people's perceptions of libraries was you thought it was a little too quiet, so that's why we have this podcast now.
Sure.
But before I get into your main thing, music. I have to talk first, though, because this is a great little thing about libraries and just about reading culture in general. Is I asked you beforehand, I don't want to put you on the spot, if you'd read any good books lately.
Yeah.
And you...
And I said that I haven't had time very much to read. I've been doing audiobooks,
right.
which I'm actually doing a lot of audiobooks, but I'm probably reading more now. Because I don't have to sit down with paper and find a quiet spot,
right.
Especially with 6-year-old twins, which
right.
it's still not quiet for audiobooks, but it's a different thing.
But that's a whole. Some people might have been self-conscious that an audiobook isn't real reading. I'm doing air quotes.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Kelly will be the first to tell you that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't read a paper book in probably 5 years.
Oh, wow.
I don't have time, and to me, sitting down and reading, like, my mind would just wander, and I wouldn't actually, like, consume the book.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I listen to. That's all I do is read books, and, so I'll alternate between a book and podcasts, and I've read so much, and things that I wouldn't have, like, bothered with otherwise. Mm-hmm. It's real reading, man.
yeah, and so I just posted on Facebook the other day that there was a study that said that that your brain actually reacts to an audiobook the same way that you do when you're reading, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've been doing also is reading some books with the audiobook as well. So I have the additional audio visual plus and I think that just makes it it sinks in a little bit more, and as I'm studying certain things versus just reading for fun. So.
Yeah, for me, if it's a really dense, like, nonfiction book, it's probably not going to stick. Or if there's like Game of Thrones, that was a really tough audiobook if you hadn't seen the show, because there was no, like, mental image to put on these, like, 150 people you had to keep track of. Right. But for fiction and for, like, lighter nonfiction, I think it's a perfect medium.
Yeah.
And I think a question I get so often now when I hand people new library cards is, can I get audiobooks with this? People are really excited about it.
Yeah.
And you can use your library card to get audiobooks or ebooks. So
we have 3 services at Ferndale Library that offer audiobooks: Hoopla, Libby, and RB Digital. And between the 3 of them, you've got a pretty decent free library.
That's very cool. So how do I get an audiobook? So I get to download that on the app?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So you'd have to download 3 different apps, unfortunately.
Okay.
But
I can use my card for that.
You use your
That's
card
awesome.
and your PIN, and you sign in. And I just kind of like keep a running holds list going with the one that has lots of holds, and then, just sort of switch between the apps. And
so then is it still due back in 2 weeks? I still have to like actually sit down and listen to the book?
Yes.
Yes. There's no fines, of course.
Yeah, okay.
And the way that Libby in particular is the biggest one works is you can always place another hold, and it'll kind of give you a nudge like, hey, this is due in a day. Do you want to place a hold again in case you're not like close to finishing?
Okay.
It works pretty well. Back in the day, a lot of library like apps and technology didn't quite have the feel of like real apps, but Libby and Hoopla in particular feel like Audible, feel like other services like that. So
that's good.
I would recommend them highly.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I'm gonna use that service more, because I'm also the other issue that I have with books is that I'll start one book, I'll read a little bit of that, start another book, read a little bit of that, and I'll have like 4 or 5 books stacked up that I never quite finish or whatever. But definitely with audiobooks, I don't know, I'm just kind of getting them done. So.
Yeah.
It feels like there's an inertia to finish, you know, because what's so hard about hitting play, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, you traveled a lot in your youth, in your teens, right? You kind of were raised all over.
Well, so born in Kentucky.
Okay.
My father was in the military. So my dad was a tank commander.
Okay.
He volunteered, strangely enough. He did 2 tours of duty in Korea, 2 tours of duty in Vietnam.
Wow.
So somehow in between those 2 tours of duty in Vietnam, I came about. I mean, I say somehow. I guess I know how it happened, but so he came home, and and then it's like, oh, hey, by the way, yes, we have this 10-year-old son that we thought was going to be an only child, and guess what? We have a surprise. So I was born in Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Okay.
We moved around a little bit, lived in Germany for a while, lived in Kansas for a while, and then my dad retired, and we moved to Tennessee, to my mom's hometown, Elizabethton, Tennessee.
I'm projecting my experience on you. I always say this, and this is going to sound so cheesy on a library podcast, that I've never felt like I was a citizen of the city where I was living, and I've only lived in 3 cities. I never felt like a citizen of that city until I got the library card of the library where it was. Did you get a chance to ever stop into any libraries in Germany or anywhere when you were growing up?
When I was in Germany, I was 4 and 5.
Okay.
So the school library, for sure, learning exactly what a library was. And then when my dad retired, we moved back to my mom's hometown in East Tennessee. My mother was actually on the library board.
Really?
So we spent a lot of time there at the public library, and she was a storyteller. She would do storytelling with kids with these aprons, and she would have little props inside the pockets of the aprons and pull things out for the different parts of the story and stuff like that. So that was always cool. So I was always at the Elizabethton Library.
That's great.
And walking distance to downtown, it was pretty cool. So and then we had good school libraries there too. So
that's good. Yeah. That's good to hear. We always love good library visitors on the podcast. Yeah. Music is a big part of your life, though. Where does music come in?
It is. Music is what I do. I just left a session at Rust Belt Studios, and one of my clients is the Michigan State Fair. And so we have a contest called Michigan State Fair Superstar. And for our winner this year was Miss Carmen Carmen Diaz, and for her album that we're working on, I hired the producer Maurice Hurd. He goes by Piranha Head, and one thing that a lot of people know Piranha Head from around town. You just kind of see him, and he's a character,
right?
You kind of, once you meet him, you know who he is. A lot of people don't know that Piranha Head is a Grammy-nominated string arranger.
Wow!
And so today we were recording strings with several members of the DSO, with the harpist who played on Papa Was a Rolling Stone,
and
a bunch of old Motown stuff. And so that's where I just came from as we were recording strings for Miss Carmen's record that we're gonna, I think will be done around March or so. Get that out. So
Motown, a key influence for you. That had to have been a big moment for you just to have that.
It was. When she said that, I was like, oh wow, that was you. Oh,
Wow.
It was just so cool. Yeah. So those, that kind of stuff is really fun, and that's one of the great things about being in Detroit too, is that there's such a history and such a legacy, and still so much that's going on that's new and that's interesting and innovative. And Detroit musically has always been innovative, and so I think that's one of the things that I really love as somebody who dabbles in different types of music. Yeah, that there's always somebody that I can call on that's either done it similarly or done something strange, in whatever style.
Yeah,
right?
It boggles my mind the per capita amount of brilliance that is just sort of kind of hiding in this area.
It's true.
Case in point, we have a music producer like a few blocks away from this library, and here he is. Right? And that's I think that's especially cool because you're in the music biz, and you could be in New York or Nashville, but you're here in Ferndale.
Yeah, well, I moved here from Nashville.
Yeah.
Too,
okay. Right on.
Yeah. So I think that's one of those things that's interesting, and Nashville for me was cool. I grew up in Tennessee and went to college at Middle Tennessee State University, which is near Nashville, and so I spent a decade or so after college in Nashville playing around and all of that kind of stuff, and but I was playing funk, I was playing rock. In Nashville, there are certain niche types of things that you kind of need to do to make a living.
One would presume country.
Country or gospel,
sure,
right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I've played more country since I moved to Michigan
What?
than I ever played when I was in Nashville.
What a rebel!
I wasn't the guy that you were going to call for a country session, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Or for those gigs. Those guys are like all over. When I worked at the Tennessean newspaper in Nashville, and my boss was one of the best country guitar players you would ever hear.
Rad.
Just incredible guitar player, So that's who I would call for a country session, right? Is that kind of guy. So,
sure.
Yeah, so coming here and and it's like, wow, you guys really like this country stuff. Okay.
Well, sure.
I'll do it. I know how to do it. I can do it,
And then tell us a bit about kind of your canon, though, because we have Distorted Soul 2.0, Working for the Man, Book of Jonah. Were those all done here in Michigan?
So Distorted Soul 2.0 is interesting because I started that before we left Nashville.
Okay, because I was going to say, it looks like you hit the ground running when you got to Michigan.
Sort of.
Yeah.
So while I'm in Nashville, I end up meeting this woman that worked at the Ford glass plant down there. And we hit it off, and it's like, she says, okay. If we're going to get serious about this, eventually I'm going to have to move to Detroit. And I was like, I could play funk in Detroit.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, we can work this out. So, but this is the Stone Ages. So I'll go ahead and date myself. This is 1999.
Okay.
When I moved to Detroit from Nashville, and we had just started working on the record. So I was driving back and forth between Detroit and Nashville, and I had a job and all of that stuff. So about every 6 weeks, I would take a half day at work, drive to Nashville, work all day Saturday,
Ooh.
drive back Sunday. You know, so it was just piecemealing this record together, piece by piece, and you know, and so finally getting it to a point where we could release it then. Many moons later.
Right.
I'm also a perfectionist, which doesn't help, you know. So it just takes forever for me to do records. So that was to do my own records. I can get other people's records done quickly, but my records take forever. So so I was here, and actually that wasn't necessarily a bad thing because it gave me time to be around, to get into the scene, to meet some people. So that I could put a band together, and then once the record was done, you know, I had something I could just hand to people and say, hey, you know, you want to come and play a show with me, you know, that kind of thing. So so we were able to hit the ground running after a long runway. Yeah.
I like that included in your checklist of should I move there or not is can I play funk there?
that was the only question.
But yeah, I mean, that must be a whole trip of producing yourself because you produce others. Can you talk about, I guess anyone listening to this podcast might be a library fan. They might not know what a producer does.
Sure. Well, the best analogy, I think, is that a producer is kind of like the director of a movie.
Oh, sure.
And so the artist will come in with a script. Basically, the artist has these songs, and they have a certain vision.
They have raw talent.
Right.
They're ready for their monologue.
They have their talent, and they have a certain vision for what they want to do. And then the producer's job is you know, much like a film producer, is to find the nuts and bolts to make that happen, and then like a director to make that vision come to life. And so to help people make the movie that is that particular song. Or an album or whatever. And so when you're producing yourself and you're writing, and you know, I tend to take a lot longer than I necessarily probably have to, but that's me. I'm always searching for this vision that's way out there to hear things I've never heard before, you know, and it takes trial and error and that kind of thing. Whereas, you know, when I'm working on somebody else's project, I'm the guy that can inject that other idea. Oh, let's try this, and then we can actually sit together and do it. So it's a little different producing someone else versus me just doing it myself. So
were there records you remember listening to that just blew your mind, specifically the sound of them?
Oh, so many.
Yeah,
so many. Yeah, I mean, because that's just what I do is I just get deep in and really am listening to not only the
personality who's singing,
the personality of the singer, or the lyrics of the song, but I'm listening to, wow, they've got that really cool effect on the drums. You know, what is that? And that, you know, why is the vocal going? It's going left to right to left to right. You know, it's doing all this stuff. You know, it's, you can't. I don't know if you can hear that on the podcast.
Oh yeah, I think we will. It's gonna be great.
I really started digging into music when I was 14. Like I was already playing music. I was playing in the band at school. I was singing in the choir at church. I was singing in the choir at school and all of that. And around the age of 14, I was kind of hit with, you know, this is what I want to do. This is who I want to be. And I think, you know, it was a combination of people like Wynton Marsalis, who was like 19 when his first record was done. So that kind of made me think, oh, wow, I can relate to that. But then from there, going and listening to some Miles Davis and listening to the album that really made my brain explode was Prince's 1999.
Ah, yes.
Because, I mean, for so many reasons, it's just so ridiculously funky. But then there's all of these sounds and this imagery and the lyrics and then also I was very Christian. I was very Baptist. And so he's saying these profane things that went against everything that was supposed to be good and righteous. But it was so funky.
Right.
It was so good. I couldn't stop listening to it. And it's like, oh, I gotta turn it down so mom doesn't hear it. But oh, it's so good, you know.
Isn't that the thing? I mean, you know, I was raised Roman Catholic and I wasn't allowed to listen to Prince or David Bowie.
Oh,
but my goodness, didn't they just make the coolest sounding records?
Right.
Oh my gosh.
And so what do you do? It's like, okay, you know, and I was on the Columbia House Record Club.
Oh man.
Do you remember that?
Oh,
you know? And so then also around that time I ended up getting, what was it? Delirious, Eddie Murphy. And my mom was like, "What are you listening to? What is this?"
Sounds like my house.
Yeah.
I'd have like Pearl Jam record on. I knew exactly where the swear words were.
Right.
She probably didn't even know that was in there. I was like so fast.
But yeah, tell me about your other influences in your life, and whether or not Mom's Storyteller had an influence. Because I imagine, like, when I think of someone who's working in a library, they must be a patient soul.
Well, she wasn't working in the library. She was on like the board.
The board, yeah,
right? So the community board,
sure.
and they would talk about all these things. But she was a huge influence.
Yeah.
I mean, as mothers will be.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that she felt was really important was when she grew up in that town, the schools were segregated, and so across the street from the house that my mother grew up in is a building that now houses the public school administration for Elizabethton City Schools. But before that, it was Frederick Douglass High School. So it was the segregated high school for that neighborhood. And so one of the things that she felt was really important was that there were a lot of history. There was a lot of history that she was learning in school, in those segregated schools, that I wasn't learning, and that my older brother had not been taught in our integrated public schools. And so one of the things, my mother was just the consummate. You think about a community activist and what those people are doing, but my mother was the one who would organize Black History Month programs for the community.
Oh, right on.
And we would have a program at the church and that kind of thing, or she would, she was doing everything. She was on the board at the Senior Citizen Center. She was president of this club and president of that club and president of the Missionary Society at church, pianist in church, the secretary of the church. So she's paying, writing the checks to pay the bills for the church.
Right.
All of that kind of stuff. That's who my mother was. She's
great.
that person that's just doing everything. And so that was a big influence, that idea that there's something bigger than you. There is a community. It may just be your little small town, or
right.
It may be your state, or it may be your country or your world, but you've got to serve more than just you.
Truly.
And that's really important.
Not that I would ever speak ill of any other artist, but I think when you are an artist or engaged in the arts or making music or whatever, I think it is easy to fall into the trap of becoming self-involved.
Yes.
You might not even have control over it because you're sort of focusing on my work and getting it out there.
And that's, and that's something that I always...
You have worked against that,
yeah.
for sure.
Probably to my detriment in some cases.
You're very involved. You're very engaged.
Yeah, I'm very engaged. I like working with other artists.
Yeah.
I like collaborating with other people. I think that's fun. Sometimes I should probably sit, in my basement by myself a little bit more than I do. But yes, that's one of those things. It's very easy to just be very focused on, this is me, and it's all about me as an artist, and I have a hard time with that. I just don't, for whatever reason. I mean, good or bad or whatever. I just don't do as well just sitting in a room just by myself, which is why my records take so long, because I'm sitting in a room by myself, for a long time, and it's I need to get somebody else in here so I can get this finished. Sure.
We're gonna link. Nadir has put out a couple of singles very recently. We're gonna link to them in the show notes for sure, so you can hear it though.
Yeah.
But, I think it's pretty cool though. Anyone who comes to this library even to volunteer for the bookstore or volunteer anywhere, I really appreciate that they're taking the time and that they clearly grasp the importance of being involved in the community. So clearly your mom got that. And clearly
She did.
You're getting it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and I think that especially what you all are doing here at this library feels less like the traditional library and more like a community center.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
And so, which is kind of odd because I think there's a paradigm shift that needs to happen, right? Because when you think about the library, you don't think about the library as, I gotta come in and be very quiet.
And there's books everywhere.
Yes.
Read.
Right. Really quiet.
Sure.
But then, but there's music and there's just so much stuff going on. It's like, I don't know. We're building all these buildings and all, like we need to just put a basketball court out here.
Yeah.
And just make it the community center kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's because I think it feels more like that. Which is great. I think that's going to help libraries live. It's one of the cool things about this library.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we've even unconsciously done that. That's very unconscious of what we do here.
Yeah.
I think people's needs both change and stay the same. People still need to read for school. People still need to read for entertainment, and we're always going to be here for that.
Yeah.
But people need a place for a business meeting, and you can come here for that.
Yeah.
You can, you can't afford to go to a show, come to the library. You're going to see some awesome shows. Maybe you'll see some movies. Maybe your kids need a place to go after school. Maybe they, we have a program that's like wildly successful called Uprooted. It's like children's music and movement and story time.
2 and 3 year olds.
And
just
it's
get to,
unreal.
My
like
kids,
60 kids in there,
Yeah, my kids came in, I guess we were up until maybe 2 or 3, I think they would come. We had a nanny that stayed with them for a little while, and so she would bring them over here, and that was just a fantastic. Of course, they still think of the library when they come here. They're going in that room and they're running around. I'm like, it's a library. This is what we do in the library.
We'll love it. We love it.
Changing it.
Yeah. That's 2 things for me. I want kids to not feel like they have to be quiet when they get here. I mean, we have a kids corner for that. They can go there and,
Be a little crazier.
We have quiet study rooms for the people who want quiet study, and it all works out. But I like to think of this place as the place where you can, not like a museum, but where you encounter culture. I mean, on a daily or weekly basis, we have programs here, and even if you aren't into funk rock, you can walk into the courtyard and see Nadir. There he is. Here it is, a free show for you at the library.
And that's cool.
And you can just encounter it.
Or, the artwork that's just up
That's
and
just
around.
there.
Like, you may find a new artist just by accident, by walking in this place.
Yeah.
I mean, and having a podcast, I think, is a wonderful thing. So you guys you're actively doing this. So changing that perception and that paradigm of this is what a library used to be.
Right.
This is what the library, can be or is now. I think there's still that shift that has to happen. But I mean, you're actively doing it. What else do you do? Like, what else are you guys cooking up?
Oh my gosh, there's so much. Well, we have book clubs. I think I'll say it on mic. We're probably going to have a music book club at some point where we just engage the music scene to come read biographies of musicians.
Oh, that would be fun.
We're just wrapping up a series on hygge, which is a Danish-Norwegian lifestyle to sort of up your coziness during the winter months. We have lots of craft. This is what's interesting. We're doing craft programs for adults, and they're all ages, but they're sort of really engaging Gen Y, Gen X, people in their 30s, 40s, 20s to get into the library on a weeknight, hang out together, and work on a craft.
Get some human contact.
It's been a hit.
We did an adulting series, so like every 2 months, and it was stuff like how to plan for your retirement. There was also like putting on a dinner party, etiquette, stuff that's
very cool.
And it got people in a room. There was, food, and which is always a way to get people into the library.
Yeah.
And we do what we call readers advisory. So a lot of people think, oh, I'll just place my book on hold, come and pick it up. But what if you don't know what to read?
Yeah.
We have people on
you just
staff.
read a book that you loved. You could come in and see a librarian and say, I really loved this author.
Right.
And then they'll give you 3 recommendations. Sort of,
Okay.
It's a human algorithm that they use their brain as an information scientist.
Right.
And we're doing a lot of outreach with the schools, which we're actually a district with. I mean, our youth librarians are unreal. Like, I can't believe the amount of stuff that they do. They're engaging teens. There's a Reading Rainbow book club that's in conjunction with affirmations.
We're doing a new Pizza and Politics with the teens to get them
Really?
engaged on media literacy and the importance of voting.
So since my favorite pizza place has closed now, unfortunately, because of our construction downtown, are you guys going to put a pizza place?
Oh my God.
You got so here's my plan. This is what I want for the Ferndale Library. I need a coffee shop.
Okay.
And I need pizza.
Okay.
Oh, man.
So and
If you buy the ant traps,
Yeah, sure.
that would be the thing, right?
yes.
I really think we're only about 2-3 years out from pizza in the library.
You think so?
I think
Coffee shop is old hat at this point.
Yeah,
Pizza in the library.
pizza in the library is the next frontier for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I should say on Mike, we're doing book launches here too for local authors. If they have a new book, the party for the release date is here. Why not?
That makes sense.
One of the authors is going to do an immersive theater performance for her book and put together a live interpretation of a chapter from her book. So pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. Awesome.
Randomly encountering culture at the library.
Yeah.
And we we have pretty big social media presence, which isn't just like, hey, come to our program. It's here's what we're doing. What's your opinion? What do you want to see here?
Right.
For sure.
I'm actually just got a specialty computer that's going to have Adobe Photoshop and Premiere and maybe some of the other Adobe programs that folks can come in and use that for free. These
that's a great
super
idea.
expensive programs that you might need for, an hour or two, and you don't have to buy them. So
That's
we're
great.
always looking for stuff like that.
Yeah.
How can we fill a niche?
Yeah.
There's some bigger libraries that have storage space they lend out like tools. Oh, you need a stud finder? Don't spend $25. Come to the library.
That the library can do that. That's the other reason we have a podcast is because a library can.
Right.
The definition of what a library is changing. So
Yeah. So can I talk about something at another library that we're having a conversation about?
of course.
Southfield Public Library does a jazz and blues event, and so I'm in talks with them about how we're going to pull off. They asked me to do their Juneteenth show, and so we're going to do a program that is beyond just my band playing, but like I'm still envisioning it, but a history of funk and freedom songs kind of thing. So I think that's going to be cool.
So it's going to be very narrative. You're
I think it has
threading
to
this
be.
to the yeah.
I think it has to be. I just have to write a narrative. So, so that's going to be interesting.
We know you can do it.
Yeah, we know you
well,
can do it.
I hope so. They had confidence to call me. So I've got to. That's one of my things that I'm most excited about for the first half of the year is writing that, creating that, and going to perform that there.
Do you have a date for it so we can?
It's June 17th. I think it's Wednesday.
Okay.
I'll let you know for sure. I'm pretty sure. I don't have my calendar, but yeah.
Oh, it's in the show notes for sure.
Okay, cool.
But that's the thing is the library wants to be encouraging of its local artists. I think that the whole other thing, libraries are community centers. They're also getting into just being places that celebrate their community's history.
Yeah.
And the artists are a part of that history.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So,
that's Ferndale is a great artistic community as well. So I think that's there's a lot of people that you can draw on there, but just the history of the community and the great location here, of being able to just come and the fact that I could do all of the things that you mentioned at the library is just fantastic. So.
Yeah, and you're centrally located. We're here in Ferndale, Michigan. If anyone's listening to us outside of Michigan, and I hope you are, we're just 1 mile north of Detroit, so you can bounce over to Rust Belt Studios, or you can bounce down to Detroit. We're right here, centrally located. It's a great city.
Yeah, that's the thing.
We're biased, of course.
Yeah, well, and I moved to Ferndale 6 years ago, so we were in Westland, which also has a really cool library, but we were just far from everything. So I think what I really love about Ferndale is, we're 15 minutes from everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We commandeered this conversation and made it so much about libraries. We didn't get to talk about anything else you're working on or looking forward to.
You know, we're working on these are the things that I'm working on. Yeah. So we just shot a concert film, so I'm in the process of
that's
editing.
awesome.
Well, yeah, so I'm in the process of editing and all of that kind of stuff. So working on that with a guy named Carl Kingson, a fantastic local filmmaker, and so that's what's next. And then we're still working on the next Nadir record, which is taking forever, as it does. You know, because I think the last time we talked, I had my last full album was released in October of 2012, and then I had Twins in May of 2013, and so I've just been busy.
Sure.
You know, so but it's cool. I don't have a record contract, so I don't have somebody breathing down my neck.
Still playing shows,
I have
though.
to make a record. Yeah, still
playing
on
the
shows,
festival circuit.
Still doing a lot of producing. You know, so I think that's fun. I'm good with it.
Yeah. Well, this library has a summer concert series. You should know, and it's a monthly thing, June, July, August, and these are outdoor shows. So we were really glad to have you rolling up the full ensemble.
It was a lot of fun.
I don't know if we were your most unusual show or not, or inconspicuous, unconventional spot.
It was a cool spot, and it was a beautiful day.
It was, yeah.
You know, I mean, that was and the PA was great.
Thanks to you.
We made sure of that.
Yeah. So have you guys started booking booking for this year already?
You
know who's on?
Have been done for.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Actually.
Oh, so you're already.
We can already say we'll be having some jazz kicking things off with Rob Crozier.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, thrilled for that. We're having in August, we're having an Ypsilanti band. I don't know how you would describe them, Kelly.
They call themselves Crabgrass. It's Black Jake and the Carnies. And it's been my dream to have them here because I would go to Ypsi a lot back in like 2006, 2007, and they just stole my heart. There's accordion, there's washboard. They sing all these old, like, dark, like, murder ballad kind of things.
But it's a very punk rock energy.
And it's punk rock.
Very fast tempo.
So I'm really excited about that.
Was that the name of the band back then?
Black Jake and the Carnies.
Okay,
yeah.
so they've always, because there's another band out that way that does similar kind of stuff called Root Stand. I don't know if those guys are still around. They were fantastic though.
Yeah.
Too, so yeah.
So,
yeah, and then we also have Kate Highnote is a balladeer. She does sort of a folk Americana ambient thing. Really good stuff.
And they're going to have some strings, which is going to be cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it's just happening out there in the open on the evenings of your summer, Ferndale. You just roll up and see it.
That's very cool.
You can encounter culture.
My favorite thing that I've done at this library is have like Japanese taiko drums in our community room.
Yeah.
It was so loud, and it made me delighted to see people's faces of like, oh, that's so loud. And
These
it's
are
like,
drums with like a 6-foot diameter.
They're huge. Like they would fill this room, and there were some people who were annoyed, and I didn't care.
Yeah.
It's like it's an hour out of a month. But Jeff and I book this series together, and I usually am like, well, let me have one weird one, and Jeff can do the classic, like, good. And I'm like, oh, let's get some weird things in here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yep. Nadir, thanks so much for coming in today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a blast, and we're looking forward to whatever you're doing next. But you already got some cool things with that concert film.
Yeah.
And that song that you talked about with some harp and strings, maybe some cello on there too.
Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
beautiful. On that note, this has been another episode of A Little Too Quiet, and we're having so much fun making this podcast. And we want to thank you, everyone, for listening so far. If you are checking us out on iTunes, please leave us a rating so we can find some more listeners out there. And I've been joined by Kelly Bennett, the producer here. I'm Jeff Milo, and Nadir Omowale, who is probably online. It's probably NadirOmowale.com. This music you're listening to is by John Duffy, also a local musician. We've got more coming up for you soon. This is the podcast that was made possible by the Friends of the Ferndale Library. So if you want to support this podcast, you could just go to ferndalefriends.org and click donate. Thanks again for listening.